are here with Ross. Ross the boss.
The big fat sauce.
Cool. So we're gonna jump right into it, man. Tell me about Ross, who you are, and your origin story.
The origin of Ross Nation. And yeah, I'm Ross. I live in Las Vegas. I've been here just over a year. Originally, I'm from California, and I've spent most of my life as a jazz drummer, and that's what I wanted to be starting in high school. And as a kid, had different ideas of what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a garbage man. Then I saw the movie First Kid. I wanted to be Secret Service, and then kind of changed all the time, as kids do. So in high school, got very serious about playing the drums. My high school had a great jazz band program. So we got to go on tour to Europe 2 different times, play big jazz festivals all across Europe. And then I decided I wanted to go to college for music. So 5 days before Hurricane Katrina, I moved to New Orleans to go to college, quickly evacuated, and kind of had a change of heart, but maybe more a change of mind, where I thought, okay, let's be a little more practical. I should get a psychology degree. That didn't last very long, and I got back to music. So I lived in New Orleans, playing the drums, playing music, playing in school, gigs, on tour with different bands. And after 7 years in New Orleans doing that, I moved to Oakland, California to be with a different band. It's a kind of an indie electro pop band that desperately wanted to sound like Little Dragon. We were almost there, not quite. And once that faded out, I focused on a funk band in Oakland, more like Tower of Power, Jamiroquai kind of stuff. And somewhere along the way, I got into yoga, and I actually became a yoga teacher. I took a training, started teaching yoga classes, started teaching handstand workshops. I got really into handstands and arm balances. And at that time, I thought I was going to go on tour teaching handstand workshops. I was going to shoot this video and use that to promote myself to get work teaching handstand workshops. And then after a couple years of teaching yoga, I realized how little money you can actually make and how much work it really was. It was a total grind. Like, there were times where I would teach 2 to 4 classes a day, and you would just be exhausted, and not to mention all the laundry you have to do. Like, I'd be doing laundry twice a week and I had a lot of clothes too. And that was the least of the worries teaching yoga. So then, I've always had a camera. I grew up skateboarding and made videos of us skateboarding. The first movie I made was called Automaton. And then the second one was called Dark Black, because my friend would order his Oreo shakes dark black. So a lot of Oreos. And that had little to do with the movie, of course. So I always had cameras. And then I got hired to shoot headshots for my father's company. And I'm like, great, I have no idea how to do this. Let's figure it out. And then I learned there's a lot more to it, and there's something there. So that got me really into professional photography. I was still teaching yoga at the time, so I was kind of doing both. And then COVID hits, everything goes away on my music, my yoga, most of my photography work. But I decided no more teaching yoga, and I haven't since. I still play music, not as much as I would like, but the business of photography is finally what we're doing here.
Sweet. What was it like growing up as a kid?
Oh, I had a good life. I had a loving family, very, very, very lucky. Lived in the same house my whole life. Parents stayed together. Those 2 things alone are highly unusual now. Yeah, a lot of good times. A lot of support and help from my parents. They gave me my first skateboard. They gave me a drum set. They gave me a camera. All these things. So yeah, it was nice growing up, and I was the youngest, so that was the probably. It's nice to say that that was the biggest adversity I faced.
Yeah, sometimes there's privileges with being the youngest, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, youngest and the only boy get to get away with a lot, and a lot of freedom, which is very important.
Were there any significant memories from your childhood that have kind of stayed with you throughout life?
I was thinking about this the other day, and sometimes something will happen, and it seems surreal in retrospect. Like, did that actually happen? And especially when it's not acknowledged in the moment. So a friend of mine, I must have been in the 6th grade, and we went to his house after school, might have skateboarded outside for a little bit, and then came inside to hang out. He's there, I'm there, his 2 younger siblings are there, and his mom comes home, and she's cooking something. We're hanging out in the kitchen, living room, she's cooking something in the oven. Next thing you know, the oven is on fire. And the mom is freaking out. She doesn't know what to do whatsoever. She's yelling to her son to go get your father. He's in the shower. Get him out here. And I'm just watching this unfold, and I'm like, no one's going to try to put out this fire. I casually see a pitcher on the kitchen counter, fill it up with water at the sink, and just douse the oven with it. And the fire's gone in a moment. And then 10 seconds later, the father comes in a towel, and he's like, what did you get me for? My memory of that, I'm not a hero, but my memory of that was that the father kind of didn't believe anything happened, and nobody even acknowledged that I put out the fire. And I hadn't thought of it this way, but it's almost indicative of many things that happen to me where something major happens, maybe you save the day to a minor degree, but people don't notice, people don't acknowledge, and it's a reality.
What did the mom say afterwards?
Not much.
Still in shock.
Yeah. I think she was in shock. Their family was in shambles. They got divorced.
What about a pivotal moment in your youth or even when you were younger that's really profoundly shaped who you are today? Besides being a amateur fireman.
Yeah, I did want to be a firefighter toward the end of senior year. I had my AP bio teacher in high school was a ringer for Dwight Schrute, although Dwight Schrute didn't exist yet. This guy, Pat Roizen, people would call him Rat Poison if you flip the letters. He pulled me after class one day, and he's like, Ross, what are you doing with music? You need to do something where, you need to go to college for something real. So pivotal, that was sort of pivotal, not too major. He did kind of get in my head where once I was in college and studying music, I kind of thought back to that about switching to something more substantial rather than just studying music. But yeah, I remember, skateboarding was so big for me, and like my best friend that I would skateboard with all the time, like we would just every day we would say to each other, what do people do if they don't skateboard? Like, this is just what we did. And then throughout my life, that's kind of evolved to a few different things: skateboarding, music, yoga, photography. I definitely gave up skateboarding. I broke my hand, and I couldn't actually broke my hand. I was working construction full time, and I would go skateboard after for a couple hours. I don't know how I did that, but I fell back. I was trying to tail slide a ledge, fell back, and then pulled this finger back, broke this bone in my hand, and I didn't know it was broken for 2 weeks. It just wasn't getting better. And then I thought, maybe I'm gonna have to go get this checked out and face the music. So yeah, I had to give up skateboarding after that. Too many sprained ankles, too risky. The risk-reward ratio as you get older is not worth it. You don't recover as fast, and those injuries just really take a toll.
Cool. So kind of very focused on like one thing at a time as your interests change.
Yeah, that seems accurate.
Yeah.
Although music has stayed a constant, and then even though I don't teach yoga anymore, I still do it virtually every day. I keep up my handstands. I view it as a use it or lose it thing. So any day I do work out, I'm doing handstands as well.
Cool. So we kind of touched on it a little bit. What about your dreams and aspirations, like as you were younger, and how they've evolved, to where you are now? Maybe something that you actually dreamed about, maybe you've never shared.
Yeah, I think we all have dreams, and dreams evolve. A lot of dreams don't come true. I was actually in a band called Dreams, and with no vowels, DRMS. Not to tangent too much, but I've never been in a band that had a great name. Every band I've been in has had a terrible name. Dreams. What? The Blue Party. What? I was in a band called Kaka. Kaka! It was someone else's story, and every time, if you have to explain what your band name is to somebody, you've already lost. Like, it should be powerful and effective off the bat. So I guess the dream of having a band with a great name never happened. Might not be. Well, there was one exception. Unofficially, I had this gig every Friday at the Columns Hotel in New Orleans, and it was just named after the guy who got the gig. And then after a while, I'm like, we got to call it the Dr. Spaceman Trio. So if you read it, it's like Spaceman, lifted it from 30 Rock. So that was the best we ever had. But as far as dreams go, like I was saying, as a kid, your dreams may not really make sense, and they might be fleeting dreams. I think every kid at some point wanted to be an astronaut. And then you find out when you're working with your math tutor who declined to invest in PayPal early on and who was once an astronaut, when this guy's teaching you algebra, you realize you are not qualified to be an astronaut, no matter how hard you work. And it's a test of your character, how you react to that. And that was fine with me. I think I've always been realistic with that. When I wanted to be a musician, I was realistic in that I would not make very much money. You would have the trade-off of the lifestyle. You get to do what you love, which very few get to do. Most people have to do what they can just to survive. And as the dreams evolve, yeah, I wanted to be a yoga teacher. That sounded so great. I'm getting paid to exercise, to help people feel better. And then the reality is different. You are sweating your ass off all day long. You are, in essence, sacrificing your body for the benefit of other people's body. You're demonstrating the poses, maybe not every time, maybe not on both sides, so you might get a muscle imbalance. If you're sore or injured, you still have to do it. And I've always had random dreams, coming back to dreams, I still, like, I would love to work at In-N-Out Burger for a year just to experience that. Probably never going to happen, but that is something that interests me. Like, I love trying different things. I wouldn't call myself a dabbler because the things I do, I go all in.
Interesting. I never would have pinned you for an In-N-Out guy.
Well, they run a tight ship, and I would love to know exactly how it works.
Yeah, that's cool. So speaking on the dreams and aspirations, and you've kind of touched on some of it. You found the reality of being a yoga instructor, working construction, and skateboarding all the time. Uh, what was one of your toughest challenges that you had to face in your life, and how did you overcome it? And what did you learn from it?
Well, I think right now I'm dealing with one of my toughest challenges, and that was all of my work disappearing overnight. My plan was to stop teaching yoga, and the timeline of that was decided for me. Far from ideal. And at the same time, any musical situation I had vanished overnight as well. So I was living in San Francisco and then essentially had nothing, decided to move to Los Angeles, possibly at the worst time known to man. Just waking up every day, waiting for the work to come in. And honestly, not putting in the work it would take to get to where I wanted. And after enough time, I needed a change and I needed to leave California. So moving to Nevada, moving to Las Vegas was almost a rebirth and gave me the chance to rebuild the business and really attack what needed to be done head on. And in the past couple of months, I've made massive changes that are paying off, and you can't argue with results, and I'm getting results, and I've never been happier.
Awesome, man. What do you mean by you lost your work?
So leading up to COVID, I worked at this expensive gym, a chain of gyms, and I would get access to the gym as a result of being a yoga teacher. So in the weeks leading up to lockdown in California, I would see fewer and fewer people coming to the gym and coming to class. And then eventually I taught my last class, and I had regular yoga classes that I would teach at different yoga studios and at this gym, and then even in offices. I taught at Google and taught at a law office. All of it just disappeared. I was playing in a big band jazz band in San Francisco, and that disappeared. Funny enough, the funk band, maybe my favorite band I ever played with, called it quits just before. So that was gone without everything closing down. So that went away. One of the corporate clients I had for photography went away at that time as well. So I had momentum that was just rising and rising and rising, and then it just dropped overnight. And it took a long time to really get back to that same level of momentum and to feel hopeful about it that it would work.
See. And so, what changes did you make? Like, what lessons were learned throughout that? Because it sounds like a hit after hit after hit of getting beat up along the way.
It wasn't that bad. Everyone's got their whole situation, and I've always been fortunate, so I'm not a victim here. But what happened? Yeah, I got serious and gave up some bad habits and started listening to the right stuff and I got a new mentor who's really changed my life, really helped out. And in the past 3 weeks, I've prayed every day.
That's awesome, man. So you're still in the process of making changes and course correcting.
Well, it's always a process, and it's a new current process that is working. Sometimes there's a great Tony Robbins quote where he talks about golf, and if you hit the ball 1 millimeter this way, you're way off, and you hit it 1 millimeter that way, you're way off this way, but right on, you're straight on. So little changes make that difference. And some of the changes I made were just so small. I can't even believe I didn't do it sooner.
Yeah. Well, that's a good feeling, man. So, throughout life, we have core values. What are some of your core values and, that have guided you along, and how did you develop them?
I don't think I thought about core values for the first 2.5 or 3 decades of my life. And in a way, that was incredible freedom. Didn't have to think about it. I was always a pretty free kind of person. I did what I wanted. Even if I didn't know it at the time, I was following my heart. I wanted to skateboard all day. I wanted to be a musician, wanted to play music for a living. And then once I hit my 30s, I started to think about this, what matters? What do you value? And today I value freedom and truth more than anything in the world. Once you see truth that exists, especially truth that others don't see, man, your world is changed and you almost become addicted to truth. It's like a veil has been lifted and all I want is truth, no matter how much it would destroy your perception of reality. I pray for truth every day. I want to know, I want to go as deep down the rabbit hole as you possibly can. And I'm not afraid to know any amount of truth. And if you live your life looking for that kind of truth, you're open to any kind of idea. I'll entertain virtually any idea that a lot of people might just laugh at or quickly dismiss. I think any idea is worth consideration, possibly for a short time and maybe much, much longer.
Interesting. So being honest is very important. Core value.
Oh yeah, I can't believe how dishonest and untruthful the average person is. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so when have some of these values been tested for you?
It can really even reveal itself on small levels. I think back to like driving in the car with a friend from college, and he knew where we were going and I'm driving and I'm like, is it left or right? And then he just said left. We make the turn and then he pays attention and it's like, oh no, it was right, my bad. And it's like the level of confidence in which you answered that question incorrectly. Where does that come from? How does that come out of your mouth? And just being honest on such a base level is so important to me. I wouldn't dream of answering a question that I didn't know the truth about. Like, I think he just answered just to answer and didn't think about it. And expand on that any way you like.
That's frustrating.
Yeah, it cost me a lot of time missing that turn.
Looking back, what were some of your fears and insecurities, and how have you, overcome some of those?
I think most, especially young people, are fearful of failure, potentially fear of success. That concept took me a while to understand. Fear of success. What if this works? And I think before the last year, working on my business, I did have fear of success. Because what if you gave it all you had and it still didn't work? I think that's really what that's about. I think as somebody that played music professionally, you're always insecure of your ability level. That's why we practice so much. But the performance doesn't always go like the rehearsal. Things happen. And that's what I love about jazz. You're forced to improvise and the mistake happens and you keep going. You do not stop and start over, especially as the drummer. You do not stop playing the entire song. Bass player too, almost 100% of the time. You have to keep playing. But once, and music is such a good example for this because you have the insecurity of how good you are and the fear of making mistakes. I don't think you have the fear of playing too well, but I was never afraid to take a musical risk. And I remember thinking about that. There was some article in the newspaper that I clipped out in a unique way to make the headline say, Ross not afraid to take risk. And I put that on the wall. And one of the most memorable times that I recall playing the drums, my college jazz band was in a competition at the University of North Texas, and we were performing one of our songs, and they actually had a warm-up room, which they don't always have, and there was this ride cymbal in there that I just couldn't believe how good it was. And I love cymbals. I'm a cymbal nut, and I brought cymbals, but that moment I'm like, I'm going to play this one right now. Like I'm dying to play this cymbal. So perhaps the combination of playing a really good cymbal and not being afraid to take the risk. I remember thinking like, I am going to just play. And if I'm going to push it so far to the limit that I might mess up severely when it matters the most, when we are being judged by jazz experts. I'm going to push it so far that I will potentially screw everything up. But I did not. I performed at the peak of my ability, And I remember I had a solo, and I'm in the back of the band playing in the middle of the competition, and I see the jazz band leader of our college conducting us, and I'm playing stuff, and I see on his face, he can't even believe what I'm playing. Like it was, this is not to brag or anything, but I saw the shock on his face of what was coming out of the drums. And we got first place, and I got an outstanding soloist award. So I think that risk was worth it. And although now I'm a little unpracticed, so I'm far more afraid of playing music now than I might have ever been, even though I've played in front of thousands of people at once, potentially thousands of times. But I don't think I don't. I would have the fear of not living up to where I once was and the insecurity. But that just means I need to go practice.
A cool memory, man. Like, to be able to tap into that, to remember, how awesome you did. It's amazing. So, we're talking about family, community, relationships. How have your relationships and your community ties influenced your life and who you are?
Well, I think today, and especially for me, we as Americans have a lack of community. I don't know how many people know all of their neighbors. In San Francisco, in Oakland, I knew none of my neighbors. In Los Angeles, I knew none of my neighbors. Now I know some of my neighbors. I'm starting to learn about the community. For me, friendship was extremely important. I'm very lucky to have had a very close friend since I'm 2 years old. On the flip side, I am struggling to think of anybody else that I knew in high school that I still keep in touch with. Very few people I still know from high school, very limited number of people from college that I know. The biggest community that I had a connection with was the yoga community in the Bay Area. And it is a very polarizing group. Yoga itself is extremely polarizing. I call it the slippery slope of yoga because I got into it looking to stretch, looking to learn how to do a handstand. And then people take it to the extreme and they become obsessed with astrology. They become identified with witchcraft. And how can you possibly go down that road? We're here to work out. We're here to feel better. My wife is from Calcutta. She did yoga in school as a child. She had no interest in yoga. And then we met, and after a few years of pushing her, she finally got into it and learned Ashtanga yoga. The yoga community is a big mixed bag of nut jobs, and I'd never really fit in. I didn't understand at the time, but now it all makes sense. This is good. I remember in my yoga teacher training, maybe 20 people. I was one of the few men. And I had just watched the movie, the remake of The Italian Job. And it's another day in teacher training. And I decided to make a joke. And Let me see if I can remember exactly what this was. Right. We were talking about feeling fine. And so I just jumped in and said, we all know what fine means. Freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. This was incredibly misinterpreted by the entire room and taken as a shot at all women. And somehow I managed to correct that interpretation and disarm everything that was going wrong. But what a sensitive group. And in fact, I was so obsessed with handstands that any free moment I had, I would practice my handstand at the wall, and that was problematic. People would say, Ross, there's more to yoga than just handstand. And it's like, you are correct. And you are also assuming that's all I think it is. Great yoga community, you know.
I've never heard anybody about the yoga community.
Yeah.
Interesting, man. Interesting.
Nothing to lose now.
And what about like your relationships? You know, your relationships with friends, family, you know, professional relationships. Anything there that's, you know, kind of helped influence you?
Yeah. You know, as a drummer, over the years I had just a handful of drum teachers, and you know, I'd be nowhere without my first drum teacher. Thank you, Mike. And I had a couple of transient drum teachers in college until I was selling a cymbal on Craigslist, and I met this guy who bought the cymbal. And he came over, didn't buy the cymbal, and then I didn't see him for maybe a year when I heard, oh, you should reach out to this guy, Clap. He's a good teacher. So I reached out to this guy. We had a few lessons, and then we stopped doing like official lessons, and we would just hang out. And he became my first mentor, taught me so much about music, so much about life. Really taught me about using your ear as a drummer, and just spending time with him on and off the drums. What a great role model. Really great guy. One of the first people I knew really that was very open about his faith. And it didn't do much for me at the time, but that time would come.
Interesting, man. Do you guys still stay in contact?
Yeah, a little bit on Instagram here and there. Yeah, I'd love to see him. It's been a while. Yeah.
And so, you know, looking back on, you know, your life and, you know, everything that you've done, accomplished, like, what do you hope will be your most significant contribution or legacy? And, you know, how would you like to be remembered?
I mean, the truth is most of us will be forgotten. And I think that is just the reality of it. Most people would not accept that and are delusional that something will happen and they're going to be famous and everyone's going to remember them. And maybe the biggest chance people have today at a legacy is something on YouTube. And that's fine. That I've put stuff on there that has varying degrees of an amount that I'm proud of. The legacy I can leave and be remembered for, absolutely, are the photos I take, no question. And if that's just for the people in their lifetime, great. If it's the photo you took of them that is shown at their funeral, then people will remember. And hopefully these photos get passed along. Nobody prints photos anymore, so hopefully everybody's saving all of these. But I mean, I had someone call me yesterday looking for a headshot because she accidentally deleted her old headshot. So if we can't keep track of what we already own while we're alive, what chance do we have at a future that remembers us?
Interesting. Are you going to start printing?
Kind of have to now.
It's going to last a lot longer.
Yeah.
Are there any organizations, websites, things that you are passionate about that you would want to direct people to, contribute to, or be a part of? This is more for like the end,
Yeah.
where we could put some like links and drive traffic for you.
Gotcha. Yeah, follow me on Instagram at ross.mcintire. Subscribe to my wife's YouTube channel, Roshni Dutt. We work on this channel together, and she cooks food from India. And really just look past what you're used to looking at. Go look at something different. Look at what you're not supposed to look at. What they tell you you're not supposed to look at is probably something you should look into. So go look at that.
Cool. Awesome.
All right.